It takes you less than 3 minutes to do it. You will receive a confirmation number, so you'll be able to check on your ballot, check the status, verify. It's a beautiful thing. And then when our office receives the completed ballot, we have scanners. Every ballot will have a barcode, will have a unique number. So that way you always will be able to check whether or not your vote has been received. The Postal Services place high priority on election mail. So I know there's been rumors that, people at the post office will throw away your ballots, or they'll lose them, or, all these other different negative things we heard about vote by mail. But that has been coming from Washington, D.C. And a lot of people want to suppress our vote. They don't want us to vote. And we're seeing a lot of negative messages that's been coming on social media. We know where it's been coming from. And it's been like that. So, again, we have to spread the word to our family and friends, let them know that their voice is very important. And when they vote, they will get more resources for their community. Ballot behavior dictates policy decisions. Ballot behavior dictates policy decisions. And that's the reason why we want to vote. We want to get more resources for our community. We want to get resources for our schools, our playgrounds, everything. We want, supplies for COVID-19. We want all these different resources for our community. So that's the reason why we vote. Again, the deadline is Tuesday, May the 26th for you to apply for your vote by mail application. Then the Philadelphia County office will then mail you out a ballot. You are to complete that ballot. If it's enough time, you can put it in the mail. If not, you can complete your ballot and then bring the ballot in person. We will have drop-off locations for the vote by mail applications, and you can check on that again at philadelphiavotes.com to get the latest updates, let you know what's going on with our elections. And again, I'm just advising everyone, you should stay at home. The average election board worker is 60. The average voter is 60. So that's a vulnerable population. So we don't want to expose them to COVID-19. Again, we have a stay-at-home order until June the 4th. So again, unless it's absolutely necessary for you to come vote in person, you vote in person. But if not, vote by mail. Simple, safe, secure. And again, if you guys have any questions or anything, my email address is Omar, OMAR .Sabir @phila.gov. Omar, OMAR .Sabir, SABIR @phila.gov. And please, you can ask, any questions. And then, moving past the primary, because we have an important election coming up in November as well. Whatever type of ways you want to get into educating people and exciting a lot of younger folks, primarily from ages 18 to 35. We want to increase that ballot participation from that demographic. And we also want to increase our return to citizens populations for ballot as well. There's a lot of misinformation that if you have a criminal background, that you can't vote or you can't participate in the process, which in some states that's true. But what a lot of people who believe in voter suppression are doing is they're sending out blanket messages saying that people that have a criminal background can't participate in the process or they're ineligible. But they're eligible in Pennsylvania. Once you leave your confinement, you are eligible. You could be on parole, you could be on house arrest. You're still eligible to vote, even if you are incarcerated at the county level. You are waiting for your trial, or you have been convicted of a misdemeanor, not a felony, then you can vote. If you've been convicted of a felony while you're confined, you can't vote. But the day that you're released from your incarceration, you can participate in a process. So it's very important that we spread the word, that we let our family and friends know that you're eligible, your voice counts, and we need you to be a part of the process. And so again, we work with other groups to do textathons, emails, constant calling. Our research dictates that if you can ask a potential voter at least 7 times in between elections, we have an election every 6 months, the likelihood of them participating in the process significantly increases. So again, I know you may have questions. I know you may have heard rumors, but you got the city commissioner here. and I can dispel myths, and I can give you guys good information. So if anyone has a question, I'm more than welcome to take a question.
Great, great. And we do have some questions that we will start off, but we'll definitely have some time throughout the presentation for anyone who's joining the call to ask questions. If you do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We do have a small audience here at the moment, so but we want to use the chat to kind of cater to those questions. If we need to, we may be able to look at other ways. So with that, Commissioner Sabir, I guess as it relates to the mail-in balloting, was this a change that was all? I know that many states have started to switch towards mail-in balloting. I know a lot of states in the West use this very well, and it's championed both Democratic and Republican. As it relates to Pennsylvania, was this a change that was going to happen regardless, or did COVID really heighten the need for us to really shift into mail-in voting?
On the Act 77, was changed, it was signed into law on Halloween of last year by Governor Tom Wolf. So the legislator already moved on it. Pennsylvania has some of the archaic election laws in the country. So it was actually a surprise. The bill it passed through, it changed up in Harrisburg. So that was in Halloween. So we was going to do vote by mail regardless. It passed, but the only problem that came from that was that it wasn't no resources attached with the bill. Normally, when we see changes, normally the local governments will receive some finances when they change. The way we process things. Because we had to hire staff, we had to do outreach, we had to do a few other things. Thank God for City Council stepped up big and gave us the resources that we needed. But it was very interesting. But yeah, it was going to happen whether we had COVID or not. Act 77 was the actual change that was signed into law on Halloween of 2019.
Now, one thing that I know folks are concerned about as we get close to the deadline is that feeling of the process being overwhelmed with all these individuals now filling in their ballot and being concerned that if they submit their ballot, let's say it's May 26th at 3 p.m., which is technically within the deadline, will there be enough turnaround to ensure that they will be able to actually vote by mail? I know you all are really stressing this, but is there any recommendations or is that a concern that folks need to be concerned about, that if they're submitting this information too close to the deadline, it still may be in their best interest to vote in person versus voting in mail?
Well, I mean, when I first took my oath on January the 6th, one of the oaths that I swore, is I want to protect the citizens of Philadelphia. If I had a choice whether or not you vote or whether or not you die from COVID-19 or contract COVID-19, I would take, the position that you could, avoid it. And, you could stay at home, vote from home, try the process. It's a primary election. We need you in November, right? But I mean, but realistically, there's a lot of moving parts. So we have the post office involved, right? So if you have a completed application on May the 26th, it might take us 2 or 3 days for you to receive it. You may receive your ballot on June the 1st. You may receive your ballot on June the 2nd. So at that point, you're not going to mail it in because we're not going to receive it. So you have to complete it and then bring it in person. So we have a drop-off location at City Hall, we have a drop-off location at Delaware and Spring Garden, and we're waiting for state approval to have drop-off locations at every polling location, to where you can just bring your completed ballot to the polling location. And again, I know some of us, we go shopping, we go to the banks, we go to the supermarkets, and sometimes you have to wait, outside in line, to get in because we're practicing social distancing on the inside. So again, I mean, it might possibly be long lines. It's going to be, voting in person is going to be a very difficult process. So again, I just can't stress the importance of that. But again, if you give us that ballot, like I said, you may receive your ballot on June the 1st, you may receive it that afternoon, June the 2nd. We need it back by June the 2nd, 8 p.m. in our hands. You'll be able to drop it in person. So again, to avoid all that, I'm suggesting people, as soon as you're hearing this, try to apply right now. The sooner the better. That way you'll have more time to put in the mail, because we have another moving part with the Postal Service. I can't predict the Postal Service, but it's been turned around pretty well. We mailed out over 130,000 ballots. We had about 150 or so applied, so we're doing pretty good. People started applying for the ballots back in February, so it looks pretty well. We feel confident that we're going to be able to get it done.
Great, great. And to that, Linda Poindexter asked a great question. As it relates to the election, if people complete their mail-in ballot for this election in the primary, will they have to submit a second one in the general election? And I guess to maybe add to that, if you vote by mail-in ballot in June, are you obligated to always vote mail-in ballot in future elections? Or do you have the freedom to kind of bounce back and forth based on different elections? So for instance, you vote mail-in ballot in the primary, and then in the general election, you vote by mail, even if you've already indicated that you want a mail-in ballot.
Okay. You added a lot to that question, brother.
Sorry about that. But that was something that I know a lot of folks
I got you. And I'll try to answer that as best as I can.
We'll definitely address the first one in terms of will you have to reapply for a mail-in ballot for the general election?
Okay, there's an option when you're applying for your application. You can check whether or not you want to receive another mail-in ballot or not. If you check that box, then you will be on the list. You won't have to apply, and then we'll just go ahead and send you out a ballot. If you don't check on that, if it's a check that you have to check, if you don't check that, then you got to apply again. So you have the option to do it. If you don't, and then again, you're not obligated. Again, the only way how you can receive a ballot is if you make a request for a ballot. So you have the option on this current application to receive mail-in ballots if that's what you desire.
Okay. And we do have a question related to polling location. We'll kind of switch to that a little bit later, because that's another change that was pretty impactful in terms of the reduction in polls. But Emma had a question of, do you happen to have an approximate date for approval from the state for the drop boxes at the polls? And then the second part is, do you know how the public will be informed of that option, particularly those who don't have internet access?
Well, so every registered voter will receive a voter ID card. We're planning on taking out radio commercials. We'll do a press release, but everything typically goes to Philadelphia Votes.com right now, because it's the way how everything is set up. We're coming down to the last minute, but again, we need those approvals from the state. And with COVID-19, things change so much. We're working with the health department, the mayor, the governor. There's so many different moving parts. We really wish that we could, do everything sooner. But again, we'll play it by ear. We have a weekly sunshine meeting every Wednesday that's open to the public, where we discuss and go over the latest news and everything. So waiting on the Department of State. It should be by next week. It shouldn't be no longer than that. But I can guarantee you with surety that City Hall and Delaware and Spring Garden will be a drop-off location. We just have to worry about the other locations, so we're waiting on that. But again, PhiladelphiaVotes.com, we'll have radio commercials. We'll do like a press release. We'll do PSAs and things like that to inform the public.
And then I guess a follow-up to that, will that mail piece include the info at the boxes?
What you mean?
Emma, if you can chime in with your question.
Okay, I muted myself. Thanks for having this. I really came on to hear about the drop boxes. So since you're sending this mail piece to all the voters, could there be a line included saying that, drop boxes are going to be at the polls and at Delaware Avenue and City Hall?
No, we actually started mailing out. We actually started putting the voter ID cards in the mail already. That's 1 million pieces, so you can't wait till the last minute to do that. Unfortunately, we already started sending those out already.
So I know you talked a little bit about this earlier as it relates to some of the misconceptions. I guess how can we, we know a lot of times folks in the urban community can be frustrated with changes, and especially when there's a system where they feel like they're already disenfranchised. Obviously, I know you're a champion for this process and encouraging everyone to vote. What are the things that you hear in terms of colleagues, or maybe not colleagues, but the community as it relates to their frustrations with this process, and what should we be saying as trusted individuals, messengers? How should we champion the message that you all are saying so that more individuals understand that they can trust this process?
Well, I mean, just as trusted individuals, I think we just had to just get into vote. I mean, we're looking at the numbers from Black and Brown communities, even before COVID-19, we saw voter apathy. 7 out of 10 Philadelphians didn't vote didn't vote in the contested mayoral race. And that same mayoral race, you had all the city council, you had judges, you had city commissioners, you had register of wills, you had sheriff, right? It's impactful on people's lives. And 7 out of 10 Philadelphians didn't participate in the process, and those numbers get worse when you get into Black and Brown communities. So, for the last decade or so, we've seen a sharp decline on people just not participating in the process. And so I guess it has to go back to, okay, what's in it for you? I mean, anybody can use any excuse not to participate in the process. I mean, that's just how it always been, and when we've seen higher turnouts, we've seen people that was trusted. Sorry. Uh, so what we've seen is that, we ask people to participate in the process. And, just talk about the importance of voting. The process, you know, that's later. That's just an excuse, I would say, people not to participate. I think you just got to hone in how important it is to vote, and that you're important, and that, policy decisions get based off whether or not you participate in the process. And what's in it for you? You got to answer that question. Hey, man, more resources. In 2016, President Trump asked the question. He said, what's in it? Why should you basically vote? What do you have to lose? And I don't think that we answered that question appropriately. We saw over 250,000 people that participated in the process in 2016. And a lot of the millennials, just to talking to them, they just saying, okay, what's the point just of voting as a whole? Whether it's by mail, whether it's by anything. What the hell is the point for me voting and being involved in the process? And so a lot of the misconceptions, a lot of negative connotations is messaging from Washington, D.C. We saw President Trump threaten states that was encouraging vote by mail. He was threatening to take their funding away, their federal funding away, just because they were trying to push or trying to allow people to vote by mail. So negative messaging is coming from Washington, D.C. And our people are regurgitating that. So I guess a trusted messenger can just say, hey, man, you got to vote. And I would suggest that you would go through the process yourself and do it. And then that's when you can tell people, whether or not to vote. You got to have enthusiasm about it, because other than that, I mean, what's the other options, right? All the nursing homes were closed. All of the senior facilities were closed. All the fire departments were closed. And you still practicing social distancing. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, voting from home, I mean, that's a easy option. Then when it was passed, we saw that vote by mail is actually going to increase participation, because you have a lot of seniors that's sick and shut in, whereas though they weren't participating they stopped participating in the process because they couldn't get out the house. So, we saw in states like Washington, Oregon, where, it increased voter turnout. So again, it is change when you're doing something different. But again, we have to build the enthusiasm, something emotional. Really can't quantify it. You got to smile about the process. You got to talk about the process. You got to say, hey, man, my friend is City Commissioner Omar Sabir. I can have him answer any questions. And then people will feel good about the process.
So we want to shift here slightly. As we mentioned, a second part of this process was the change in some of the polling locations. Are you able to just provide some insight as to why is this change occurring? Was this something that was already in the books and folks maybe have missed out, or was there something that kind of caused this change in terms of the reduction of polling locations? I saw one report that talked about almost 70% of polling locations were reduced. I don't know if that number is accurate, but that is a pretty significant number. Are you able to just provide just an overview of what was that reasoning?
Oh, COVID-19.
Okay.
That's the reason.
So it's as simple as COVID.
Voter, your average voter is 60 years old. The average poll worker is 60 years old. Okay, we had a significant amount of polling locations in nursing homes and senior facilities and fire department. So we cannot put a polling location in a nursing home. And then you have to have landlords that want you to house the polling locations. And so some of the polling locations were very tight. They had the same entrance, the same exit. So you can't put a polling location when you have a pandemic. I don't think people really truly understand how deadly this pandemic is that we're really in, because it's highly contagious. And a lot of people can't see the whole process when someone gets sick or when somebody dies from COVID-19. You don't really see it. So it's like, okay, you just hear about it. Okay, this person passed away from COVID, and you really can't be with your loved ones. You can't be with your family and friends because it's so contagious. You can't see them. The body typically gets cremated. So you really can't see that whole entire process. It goes very quick. But this is a deadly, contagious virus that is disproportionately killing African Americans in a very bad way. And so that was the reason why we had to reduce our polling locations. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not we want to suppress anyone's vote. That's the reason why we have election board workers. We was already down before we even started talking about consolidating process. We had a vacancy over 70% of our poll workers reported they didn't want to even come to work. So you need poll workers to make an election. That's the main reason why. That's because of COVID-19.
So then there's a potential that these closures isn't necessarily a permanent thing, but it was more of an emergency thing as it relates to COVID. Because I wonder if in the general election, if everything is back to normal completely, there is a potential that all the polling locations will be back up. Versus, is this like a test run where there's a real desire, especially when we have now an increased desire to have mail-in balloting? Is there a desire to potentially close more polling locations permanently as a response of participation in old age? To some of the points you mentioned, a lot of the poll workers are older. We may not have the same I guess I would say the same number of people waiting to step up and take over those positions and things like that. I get the sense from what you're saying that it is strictly a COVID thing and isn't necessarily something that maybe down the line we should expect for like future elections.
Well, we're still in COVID. They saying that we might get a second wave in the fall with COVID. So
Okay.
The COVID is not over. It's not a past tense thing. It's a now thing, right? So we don't know. We want to prepare as best as we can, but if we get a second wave of COVID, we've seen in the state of Washington, they didn't have any polling locations. They just did all mail, so I think it's incumbent upon us to get familiarized with the process. If you have people that still being afraid of vote by mail, and we're in the middle of this pandemic, I said, we plan on getting the data from this election, seeing what went right, what went worse, and we're going to, strategically partnership with more different organizations, and we're going to do the numbers. It's the first time that we did it, and again, a lot of people they're afraid of change sometimes, something different. We just had new voting machines. It was a lot going on, right? But if I had it my way, it would have been voting in person. But I had a whole outreach plan. We was going to be going to the schools. It was all the stuff set up. But COVID-19 changed all that. It changed all that. So again, in November, we don't know right now. It's too early.
Okay, that's good. And from your experience, and with the closures, do you find that they were done pretty equitably, meaning that they weren't, they were pretty standard and randomized versus like areas that may have been historically African American were closed much often than other locations? Because I know that's something that's always a concern when you think about polling, and that, especially if change is difficult, people may feel like, okay, while I know that they're closing location, I'm noticing that most of the locations are closing are in Black and brown communities, and that's a concern for us, versus was it just a straight up, we just randomly closed certain locations and it wasn't done in any malicious way or anything like that?
Well, it wasn't. Well, there's a formula that we used. It was based off of the vote by mail application that people apply. Like we look at certain area. If you apply for a whole bunch of vote by mail applications, right, then you probably wouldn't need a polling location in the area. So there's more voting locations in African American areas than there is in other areas. So we added that. We factored all that in. We factored in distance, travel. We know SEPTA. We factored all that in. Again, like I say, we came up with the best way we can right now. And like I say, we'll evaluate it. We'll look at it. We'll see. But as we know, the white areas of the city, they were applying for the vote by mail way higher than African American. So again, like I said, we took that information. We actually put more polling locations in African American communities, white communities, just because of the sheer numbers. Like, it was a big divide. We know there's a digital divide. We know there are other different factors that play along in it, but we try to do, like I say, do the best we can. And there was a formula that we used. We took away the zone and the ward and division structure, and now we broke them up into these zones, where there's a certain amount of population you can't have versus under. And again, all of that information is on votes, PhiladelphiaVotes.com. Tell you the exact formula, how you can look at it. But again, like I said, we need input from the community. It's the first time we did it. We'll see how it goes. And then, like I said, we'll take the feedback from the community, and then we'll put that into our next plan for the next election.
And you said that website is PhiladelphiaVotes.com?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I mean, right, you go there, you can apply for your vote by mail application. You can find your phone location. You can just find out different information, what's going on with the City Commissioner's office. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m., we have a sunshine meeting. It's just like City Council, where the commission meets in a public fashion, and we discuss the latest changes that's going on with City Commissioner's office.
Okay, and we put some of that information in the chat, so you'll have that at your disposal. You said the sunshine meetings Wednesdays at 11 a.m.
Yep. It's on Zoom, and all that information is on our website at PhiladelphiaVotes.com.
Great. I want to thank Alexis Wright Whitley from the Councilmember Gautier's office. She had a question related to the transportation. Do you know if there's going to be plans as it relates to transporting people to polling places, particularly seniors and those with disabilities? If that's something that isn't necessarily within your office's domain, do you have any, I guess as a follow-up, do you have any recommendations for community leaders that are thinking about issues around transportation for those with disabilities and seniors?
Again, in this pandemic and the high contagious of the COVID-19, as far as transporting people and doing all that, I just wouldn't suggest doing it, right? Our office doesn't provide transportation, but in the past we have seen different people that's running for office, like different candidates in the different parties, maybe the Democratic Party, Republican Party, the Working Family parties. They typically might provide transportation.
Okay. Yeah, I do get the sense that with COVID, it just really puts a lot of, it allows the public just has to take their own precautions as it relates to how they plan to mobilize. Because to your point, it's probably going to be pretty difficult for any city entity to have official mobilization in any way, because to a certain extent it would defy their own orders. So I guess to that point, it's really going to be incumbent upon any local community leaders to decide if they want to conduct some of these activities. They're going to have to just do it on their own. And then, you would have to kind of consider the risk associated with that. So I get the sense that, as you mentioned, that these polling locations are probably going to be much longer lines and things like that. So individuals, once again, should really be looking at voting by mail.
I voted last week. I voted last week, man. It was easy for me. I put my ballot right in the mail. That's where my family is voting. It's easy. I mean, and I think I'm going to vote like that in the future. That's just me personally, because I have a lot of functions to do on election day, and sometimes moving around. Sometimes I don't want to miss my vote. So for me, it was easy, right? So I'm going to do that again. I was surprised and shocked how easy it was. That's the way I'm voting.
Now, before we entertain more questions from the audience, we'll definitely open it up. Emma had a question. So from your recommendation at this point, in terms of voting or completing this process, would you suggest that we go online and just complete the application there versus waiting for it in the mail and waiting for the mailbox? Waiting for the postal service to give us the form and things like that. Would your suggestion be just to go online and begin that process on the internet?
Yes, go to votespa.com, votes, VOTESPA.com. That take you less than 3 minutes. You'll receive confirmation number. You can check on it. You'll have it, and you should do it right now.
Okay. We're gonna open up questions to the larger audience. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I have a question. For those polling places that are going to be closed, and those voters that have not done the mail-in ballot, will they be able to go to some other neighborhood to vote if their polling location is closed?
Well, again, every division will be accounted for. They're just consolidated. It's not like, okay, you're not going to be able to walk somewhere and place your vote. So every registered voter will receive a voter ID card in the mail, and it's going to tell them where to vote at. Or you can go to PhiladelphiaVotes.com right now if you want, and you can look up where your polling location is. And on that day, you can go to your polling location to vote.
Okay, I'm an avid Facebook user, so I'm real passionate about this vote. Like, I lose sleep about this whole, what's going on. So I post a lot of information to my family and friends, and they're like, do you sleep? So I'm just gonna find the info for Philadelphia Votes and post it again, because I'm worried about our people. Like, majorly, people are like, get a life. This is my life, because I worry. This is something new. This pandemic is new to all of us. And I'm scared. I lose sleep at night. And I'm like, my God, we can't have another 4 years of the horned one, the orange one, making our lives difficult. I worry about that. And I noticed too, a lot of our young people, they shrug their shoulders, are like clueless, and that scares me too. I try to talk to as many people as I can. And again, I post a lot of stuff on my own Facebook page, and people are like, boy, I care.
Yeah.
And I'm worried, especially for our young people, so.
Yeah, no, I think the concern that we see is that institutions are just being challenged in general. There's a lot of disruption that we see that's occurring with all institutions. And I think whether it's the elections in government, whether it's our historic organizations, whether it's anything, I think that's one of the biggest thing we're seeing is a heightened sense of disruption. And I think it just really forces us to really think differently about how do we incentivize or share the message as to why voting matters. I think we are looking too much for instant change, and we sometimes don't realize that it's a really long game as it relates to progress. I don't know, I imagine that with a lot of other things in life, there's a lot more of an instant result, but this process of change and this process of just seeking progress for our community, it's not an instant process. There's, I almost think about it like a basketball game. Like, you're always going to have opponents every game. So individuals, you may make progress one day, and then an election happens and progress is slowed down or reversed, and then we start up again. So I think that does create some frustrations there. I know for us as a nonpartisan organization, our focus is just to empower our community to vote and recognize that nothing stops our community from having 100% voting participation. There's no rule. Like, we know that no one votes 100%. No race, no ethnicity votes 100%. but there's no rule that says that it can't be done, right? And I think what we have to really think about is how do we encourage our community to recognize that we should be seeking 100% participation, because many of our elected officials react to those numbers. They react to the census, they react to voting. Those are the entities that they pay attention to because they're part of the system. So by participating within the system and overwhelming it, as Stacey Abrams likes to talk about, you will then get a reaction because now you've opened up their eyes to know that you're going to potentially hold them accountable, because voting is that example of holding them accountable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Other questions from the audience? Great. You know, we definitely covered a lot of the questions that I had sent to you, Commissioner Sabir. Emma, you have a question?
Yeah. So I'm super excited about the drop boxes, and I've been like a dog with looking for a bone on this one. So you know, I've called your office about this probably several times. So I want to know if the drop boxes at City Hall and Delaware Avenue will be available before Election Day.
We don't know. We're working on it. We doubt it, because by state law, we can't count the ballots up until 7 a.m. So you know, we probably just gonna grab them on Election Day. But that's probably now. But like I said, we meet every Wednesday. Yeah. So as we, you know, talk back with the state, you know, if that's issue, you know, we was thinking about it. We was considering it. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, I know that Erie put their drop box up on May 7th, Erie County. Okay. So I know it's possible. So that would be a good option for some folks, and they don't have to go to the poll at all.
No, it's possible, but you know, Erie, they don't have COVID like we have though. So again, you know, there's Governor Wolf has opened up different parts of the state, and it's by reason. Again, you know, somebody called me up when I want to go knock on doors, and I say, no, can't knock on doors. But I like to do that kind of stuff. It's just like, you know, like I say, and COVID is just so. Like I said, I was on the town hall, Senator Hughes. We had a black doctor on there, and she just really spoke about the whole process of COVID. It made me think about it. Like, wow, you know. So again, you know, we'll see. We'll talk to the with the health department. We're working with the CDC. You know, we have daily talks, and then we're looking at numbers, looking at data, and seeing how we can get that done. Because you know, we really don't want to get our staff sick. You know, we're trying to limit as much exposure as possible. Because if that happens, because we're in a 2-week window, oh my gosh, pray for us, please. Because if somebody gets sick there, I mean, wow, that would shut everything down. You know, but I mean, we'll take that into consideration. Then that's something that you want to say on the record. You know, Wednesday, I got sunshine. No taking the comment. You're more than welcome to say that you put on the record.
Great.
I have one more.
Okay, great.
It's me again. I heard about something about the National Guard being at polling places. Is this true? Is this going to happen? That sounds a little scary.
It's not going to be walking around with guns, and it's not going to be tanks. It's not going to be fatigues.
Thank God.
Have been deployed by the state. They're civilians, so they're just workers that can help out and assist with it. So,
okay.
You know.
Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any final questions that we have from the audience? So any closing thoughts, Commissioner Sabir? Once again, we really appreciate you joining us. There's a question.
So I got a question from a voter, because you know I do voter engagement, and they wanted to know what precautions you're going to put in place at the poll around social distancing, cleaning the machine. You know, everybody signs in with the same ink pen. So they want to know what you all are putting in place to help people stay safe.
Okay, number one. Okay, if you're going anywhere to sign anything, if you're going to the bank, if you're going to the post office, you're going anywhere, you should have your own ink pen, right? But we will have ink pens that we're giving to everybody, you know, just hand it to them. There's not going to be sharing the ink pens. And everyone will receive gloves, their own gloves, so that way, you know, everybody got the sandwich plastic gloves. So nobody, there will be nothing communal. And then again, there's a limited number of people that could be inside of the polling location. So again, there will more than likely be lines. We'll be enforcing, you know, social distancing. We will have masks as well. We will have hand sanitizer. And you know, whatever CDC guidelines, you know, we're working with the health department. You know, it'll be, you know, safe on that regards. But again, you know, we still got to exercise, you know, common sense. I say all the time. You know, you can't go any place without a mask on. Somebody said, "Oh, what if people show up to the polls? They don't have a mask." I'm like, bro, you can't go outside without a mask. Like, that's the first issue that we got to work on. People like, nobody can walk in without a mask. That's just the law. You can't go anywhere. You can't go in a corner store. You can't go nowhere without a mask, right? Because we want to make sure that everyone's safe. So again, like I said, there will be masks. We'll have gloves. You know, we will have hand sanitizer. We have all these different items there. We've ordered so many ink pens. No one is sharing ink pens. But again, if you feel comfortable with going anywhere, I would suggest that just bring your own ink pen with you. And, you know, maybe at the bank, post office, anywhere, you should have your own ink pen.
And one last thing, can you explain to people, like if their ballot for some reason doesn't arrive on time, that they'll have to vote on provisional ballots?
Right. So once you apply for the application, you're not going to be able to use the machines. You're going to have to vote provisionally, which is similar to the ballot that we mail you. You go to the side, to the table, then you do the process. But in November, that law actually changed. When they pushed the election back from April 28th to June the 2nd, they changed that. So in the general, if you apply for a ballot, and let's say you haven't received your ballot, and you want to come in person, you'll be able to use the machines.
Great. Do we have a question, Joe? Do you have a question? I see your hand up.
Hi, good afternoon. Commissioner, we just confirmed that the drop boxes will be at City Hall and DSG before Election Day. They are en route. We don't know exactly what day they're arriving, but they're on the way, and we expect them to be up at least a few days prior to E-Day at both City Hall and Delaware and Spring Garden. This is a brand new development that just occurred while the commissioner was on the call, so I just wanted to mention it.
Great.
Here we go, Emma. Send them positive vibes out there, girl. Go ahead, girl. I'll see you.
Appreciate that. Any final thoughts, Commissioner Sabir? What are some last thoughts you want us to leave? As I said, the individuals here are, you know, I'm going to guess that everyone here is our super voters. So they're ready to exercise their vote. They're ready to, you know, tell the world the importance of voting. What would you say is that last message you want us to take to our communities to ensure that that everyone executes?
Well, I think we have to, he said, you know, what do you have to lose, right? And he was speaking to the African-American community. I think we have to answer that question to our electorate, right? And it's not about President Trump. You know, when he was asking that question, he was, okay, you know, why even vote? What's the point, right? So we have to really address that question to people. Why are you going to vote? Now, the lens of me, I'm a 40-year-old man. It's a different lens than someone that's 18, 21, 22. So we have to figure out what's their issues. What would make them come to the poll? A lot of times we preach to them and then they kind of get standoffish, right? So we have to hear what they're saying and we have to incorporate that into our message, and we have to give that to our policymakers. Say, hey, here's where, you know, the 18 and 35s, you know, here's where they are. You know, here's the issues. You know, the one thing I can say about the vote by mail is that it addressed a lot of the seniors who were getting higher up in age. It was harder for them to get to the polls where they can vote from the comfort of their own home. You know, it addressed that. You know what I mean? Because if you look at like Washington, if you look at Denver, Colorado, they average 67% voter turnout, like every election. So all stats and all research shows that vote by mail will increase voter participation, right? It's just the way how you roll it out, it's how you get it. But we have to begin to, like I say, answer that question of what do we have to lose, and telling people, hey, listen, man, every time you don't vote, that's a vote for somebody. And then a lot of times, then it's candidate driven, right? We get into the charisma whether or not we like a candidate as a reason why we vote. You know, it has to be, okay, I'm voting because I want this for my community, no matter who I vote for. And there's always ballot questions on the ballot as well. So even if you don't like any of the candidates, you can still press yes or no on that ballot question. But you want to show, okay, that people here in this community has a behavior of voting. And then that's when we're going to get more resources for communities. Doesn't matter who wins. As long as we vote at a high rate, we're going to win no matter what. And that's the message that hopefully that we can start conveying. And then, you know, maybe like quarterly, you know, or monthly, we have, you know, conversations about government, you know, civic engagement, citizenship. You know, we have to constantly talk about, I think the message needs to be shorter, but it has to be more consistent. And then again, there's nothing that beats what you talk about at the Thanksgiving table, what you talk about at family cookouts and outings, you know, asking people, you know, should you vote? What do you need to vote? You know, it's really important to me that you participate in this process. A lot of times people will get it, but you have to at least ask them at least 7 or 8 times in between cycles, you know, are you voting? Go through your phones, talk to your family and friends. You know, those messages resonate more than a TV commercial or a billboard, you know, because they trust you. You're a trusted message. So again, I think we can do better on it. We could begin to quantify it to see whether or not our messages are working, and then we'll all work collaboratively to increase the voter turnout.
Sorry, I do have one last question that was posed. In terms of the class for poll workers, especially now with COVID, are there any plans to hold the class online so that individuals that want to be poll workers or they're equipped to understand the process? Do you know if there's going to be what those changes look like?
Yes, so it'll be virtual. If you go to PhiladelphiaVotes.com, there'll be a video that you have to watch. That's training. And we increased our pay. The pay was $100, but we voted unanimously to increase the pay to $200, and you receive an extra $50 if you take the class. So the whole pay for the election board work will be $250 for it.
Great. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us this evening or this afternoon. What we hope to do, our Facebook Live was a little bit glitchy, so we weren't able to go live there, but we did record the session. About 95% of the content was recorded. So we will hope to share it on the Urban League of Philadelphia's Facebook page. So for those super voters that we have, feel free to take this conversation once it's posted to share it on your page so others can hear what was discussed from Commissioner Sabir. Once again, we appreciate you all joining us this afternoon. We appreciate Commissioner Sabir for giving us some great insight. As we said, we know that the elections is a little uneasy right now, especially with COVID, but then never mind with the mail-in balloting, with the polling locations, there's a lot of moving parts. So we really wanted to just take a step back and help our community kind of conceptualize what polling will look like so that they're prepared for not only June 2nd, November 3rd, and then all future elections. So we're excited for this process. Once again, our goal is to get 100% participation in terms of voting in the state of Pennsylvania. We hope that we will slowly begin to get those numbers. We'll look to see if mail-in balloting actually helps that. Voting from home could be a game changer for our community. We'll be excited to dig into that data. Maybe Commissioner Sabir, we may be able to have a follow-up session after the elections where we can look and see if actually voting from home made a difference and see if this becomes a future trend for our community.
Sure.
Once again, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Tomas Varela. If you have any questions related to advocacy and advocacy work that we're doing with the Urban League, feel free to reach out to me via email. I can be reached at tvarela@urbanleaguephila.org. That's tvarela@urbanleaguephila.org. Y'all have a great holiday weekend. Make sure you complete your ballots. Go to votespa.com and complete your ballot. You have T-minus 4 days left to get your ballot in.
Yeah.
So by 5 p.m., May 26th.
Mine is in.
Mine is in. I got an email communication saying your vote will be counted. I couldn't have been more happy about that.
Good to hear.
So I'm
Good to
good.
hear.
Yeah.
Great to hear. Great to hear. So
Yes.
while you're enjoying your barbecue, go online and get your ballot and get your application in. So you all have a great weekend. Once again,
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.